I'd like to talk about communicating with sons. Sometimes people find this really hard, especially when they get to be teenagers and they become a bit grunty and all those hormones start flying around. As my wife has said, hormones have a lot to answer for. A sweet boy can become a one-word grunter. So how do you maintain communication with sons? I mean, it's a really important thing because if they don't want to communicate, what can you do? And I've always found it's great to have a strategy. So for example, I love sport and I've always done things with my boys around sport. So we go to the football, we go to the cricket. We've been doing it since they were kids. And here's a great little tip. This is what I call the Tim Winton tip. He told me this. He loves the surf, Tim Winton, right? So he always got his kids to love surfing and love the beach. And that way, as they grew older, he could spend father-child time with his kids doing things that they loved and which he loved. It's a great strategy. In other words, don't wait till they're teenagers. Get involved early, creating opportunities to communicate. So when we go to the cricket, of course, we talk about cricket, but I also love to talk to the boys on the way there, on the train or in the car, during the game and on the way home. It's a great opportunity to talk and communicate. I always think of that sort of stuff, whether it's sport or music or some other common interest, as the oil in a communication between father and child. But we'll talk later about creating opportunities to communicate. Right now we want to focus on exactly what sort of things do you say. So here are some specific tips about communicating with boys. The first tip is to build a comfort zone. And one of the most important features of that is to be shoulder to shoulder. Don't be face to face with them. And that might be, for example, driving in the car. It might be sitting next to them at a sports game. I remember the Australian of the Year, Ian Fraser, told me once that he hated getting up early in the morning, but his boys had early morning rowing. And he would deliberately get up and take them to rowing because that shoulder to shoulder time he had with them early in the morning was really precious for creating a comfort zone in which they could talk. And when I learned about this shoulder to shoulder thing, I remember once I came home and my second son Scott was sitting in a chair, and it was a great opportunity to talk to him, and I nearly sat down in the chair opposite him, and as I almost sat down, I must have looked like some gawky giraffe because I nearly sat down and then I moved up again and then I quietly went around the coffee table and sat in the chair next to him. I'm sure he wondered what his dad was doing, but there's no doubt that shoulder to shoulder works vastly better than face to face, which is a bit like an inquisition. So number one, a comfort zone with your boys. The second tip is to listen. And a bloke told me the other day, he said, I feel like I'm a bad dad because when my son talks to me, I jump in with a solution. I must be one of the worst dads in the school. And I say to him, mate, you're the 99%. We've asked thousands of dads. Who is a good listener? Who actually listens to their child without jumping in and giving a solution? Really, men, we're bad listeners. We want to jump in and solve the problem, but it's not all bad. It's coming from a position of love combined with anxiety. So we want to solve their problem for them. But it doesn't work. We have to learn to listen. And that takes a lot of discipline, to be honest, if you're a dad. And we have a tip that says, when you're talking to your son, go to Bunnings and buy a tube of super glue and super glue your lips together. So you have to listen. You listen and you don't jump in with a solution. The third tip is to actually empower them. So what do you think are the options here? Rather than waiting and then boom, coming in with your solution. Get them to think through the options and what they think they could do, because that then empowers them in the future to make their own decisions. Another tip is to talk to them about things that they enjoy. So it might be their friends, their music, their schoolwork, but not with a view to telling them what to do, not with a view to disciplining them. You should study harder or keep your room tidy. Say, how are your friends going and what's working for you in the playground and what sort of music are you enjoying at the moment? And engage with them about things that they are interested in. Another tip is empathy. To say things like, for For example, if they're getting a hard time in the playground, or they're split up with their girlfriend, or they weren't picked in the school team, or they're doing badly at school, to say something like, gee, that must be really tough. I think you need to be a little bit careful about phrases like, I understand, because often you won't quite understand. For example, if you were good at sport and they're not, you won't really understand. And there's always also a temptation, which I must admit I have, which is to go back and tell them about what happened to you as a kid. Sometimes that works, especially if it didn't work out well for you. But sometimes it can then become all about you. So by all means do it, but be a little bit careful about making the conversation about you. It's about them and how they feel. The next important tip is, dads, don't get angry. We've talked about this before in the Fathering Project when it comes to bullying. You know, it's easy to get angry and think, I'm going to ring the school, I'm going to ring the person's parents. If you get angry, they will not tell you again the next time they're in trouble. You have to stay calm. Stay calm, listen, and help them to solve their problem. Talk it through with them. If you get angry, to be honest, it's sort of loving, but it's actually then becoming all about you. It's all about them. So please, dads, when this happens, avoid getting angry. The final tip about talking to your sons is remember what they've said. So for example, if they say they're worried about a rugby match tomorrow or a mathematics test, remember it and text them the next day and say, hey, I've been thinking about it and wish you all the best, and by the way, how did that maths test or that rugby game go? So that they know you're not just token listening, you're actually genuinely listening and you genuinely care. Thanks for listening.